Hello, American Lit. I hope that you had a terrific weekend and that you are ready to start the conclusions for your argument paper. So a couple of things I wanted to make sure I reminded you of. Number one, we're not having class today. Don't forget that Class Connect is canceled for today. We'll be back at it together on Wednesday. So let's check out conclusions very quickly just to make sure that we all have our minds wrapped around what's included in a great conclusion. Okay? First and foremost, you need to bark. That's first and foremost. No, first and foremost, you need to remind the reader of the thesis statement and answer the question, so what? Now here's the deal. Don't just write your thesis statement again, all right? Don't just have it at the end of your introduction and then slap it at the conclusion and think that you've done your job, because you haven't, all right? You need to restate your thesis, but you also need to prove why you were right in the argument, okay? At the end, you need to say, so all of the statistics that I've given you and all of the facts that I've given you should show you that I am correct. And remember to do all of that without using the word you. So something like, those who see the facts of this essay, or those who have heard these facts, or one should understand after reading this. All right, because remember, you've got an argument paper. You're trying to convince people that you are correct. It gives the essay a sense of completion and closure, leaves the reader with a final lasting impression, and makes the reader glad that he or she read your paper and didn't just stop at the introduction. Okay, so the conclusion really does wrap everything up and makes people feel like they had all of the information that they needed in the paper that they read. There are a couple of different kinds of conclusions I wanted to make sure I shared with you. The first is a simple summary. And if you choose this type of conclusion, you have to make sure that you're synthesizing rather than summarizing in a conclusion. Don't just be boring and restate the points that you said at the beginning. Make sure that you are showing your readers how you've given them these facts and these facts fit together and really support and solidify the argument that you're talking about. Okay. Also, the phrase "in conclusion" is kind of trite. So at your level and your age, try to avoid the whole "in conclusion." Okay. I don't know about you, but when the pastor says "in conclusion," you can kind of see everybody stop listening and breathe a sigh of relief, because church is almost over. All right. You don't want people to feel like that about your paper. Okay. So kind of avoid the whole "in conclusion" situation if you can. The next kind, the frame or circle technique. Now this is kind of neat because we've talked about different ways to start your introductions. And if you start your introduction with a story or a metaphor or a quote or an image that you're describing to your readers, in a frame or circle technique, when you are finished and you're at the conclusion, you bring that up again. So in other words, if you start with a quote, you would end with the exact same quote, but you wouldn't just slap it there and say, hey, I did a circle technique. You would make sure to reiterate how that quote brought the reader full circle and is completely supporting the argument that you wrote about. The last two, the proposal or call to action. This is especially useful in like a persuasive essay or argumentative essay, which is what you've been writing. Okay, and this is where at the end of the time that you are writing and you're in the conclusion and you've had all these facts and you've presented what you think, you're calling people to action. If you think that Kansas doesn't do enough to prevent distracted driving, then at that point you need to make sure that you are calling people to action. They need to call their congressman, they need to talk to their city councils, whatever it is. But that's a really nice way to wrap up the whole argument essay and that conclusion piece. Last is the concluding story technique. Okay, so if you started your paper by telling a story and then you end the paper by finishing up that story, and that's kind of what we had in the brain honey lesson, where they were talking to us about the young lady that died because she'd been texting. You know, it did get very emotional, and it's very kind of heart-wrenching when you do that. But make sure that you're not, if you choose that technique, you don't want to be smarmy about it. You don't want to, you know, come off fake sounding. So it really does take some finesse if that's the one that you're choosing to use. So I want to make sure that you go through those brain honey lessons on conclusions. I will have office hours on Tuesday, so make sure that you drop in and see me if you have further questions. And if you don't, then I guess I will see you on Wednesday. Have a terrific day.